We're about to kick off the second day of the WCEF+Climate here in this studio. Welcome back. You're watching Let's Act, integrating decent work in the collection and recycling of end-of-use electronics. Here they are. The next hour, we will explore solutions for the effective collection of end-of-use electronics to highlight this material is not waste, but in fact a resource for our economy. With our speakers, we will look at how to get the e-waste to sorting, dismantling, or recycling facilities that reduce pollution, protect the environment, the safety of workers, and create decent jobs. A lot of work to do. Let's begin. I would like to introduce to you our esteemed speakers live from Nigeria, Dr. Mohammed Mahmoud, Honorable Minister of the Environment of Nigeria and leader in the leadership group of the Platform to Accelerate the Circular Economy, PACE. Welcome. We are very, very honored to have you here. In the studio, his business and reuse of e-waste led him from the Netherlands to Tanzania in 2010, where seeing the damage done to health and environment with the mission to ensure that electronic devices are collected and recycled responsibly, he founded his company, Closing the Loop. Joost de Kluiver, welcome in the studio. Really nice to have an actual person sitting here with me. Next, the Deputy Director General at the International Labour Organization believes in the power of a good social dialogue. You say it's all about listening and building bridges, so let's do just that. Ms. Alette van Leur, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. Joining the discussion, welcome Mr. Kan Matsusaki, Director, ICT, Electrical and Electronics, Shipbuilding and Shipbreaking from the Industrial Global Union Federation. Thank you for joining us today. And our last speaker, Mr. Norbert Barthel, Parliamentary State Secretary to the Federal Minister for Economic Cooperation and Development in Germany. Good morning, Mr. Bartel. We will open up a Q&A and take questions from you, the audience, so please use the Ask the Speaker function in your screen below. Please use the comment box to share your thoughts and ideas to start a vibrant discussion. Now, before diving into the Nigerian experience of managing e-waste, let's have a look at what the challenge looked like on the ground.
In low and middle income countries, many people earn a living from extracting and recycling parts from electronic waste. They do this as a part of what is called the informal waste sector. Informal recycling of unsafe parts, like CRT glass, can harm people's health and the environment. There are over 15 million people around the world working in the informal waste sector. Many of them collect, dismantle, repair, and recycle electronic waste, turning it into an opportunity to earn money.
Yes, these images don't lie, so now let's hear from our speakers. I would like to turn to Dr. Mohammed Mahmoud. Welcome. These images are all too familiar, I'm afraid. I understand also that, unfortunately, the connection is not awesome at the moment. So before we talk to the minister, I would like to propose a poll to all of you, because we would like to get the audience's feedback on how should e-waste collection in Africa be financed and managed. There's obviously a lot of players involved. So should it, A, be financed by the government, managed by the government, or B, financed by the government but managed by the private sector, or C, financed by the private sector, managed by the private sector, or D, financed by the private sector but managed by the government? So how should these stakeholders have their place in this issue? Or E, none of the above? And then if you answer E, it'd be really nice if you could leave some of your thoughts in the comment box so we can see what your thoughts are on as to how to address this issue. I'm curious to see if the connection with Minister Mahmoud is restored, and I believe that it is, so we can ask him a question. The problem is well known. We just saw the images. We know that e-waste electronic management in Africa continues to be a challenge. It's very difficult to get the collected e-waste into formal recycling channels because environmentally and socially responsible recycling is more expensive than the unregulated open burning. So tell me, how does Nigeria and specifically Lagos deal with the challenge? At least we tackled this challenge. We have a connection that is lovely. So the floor is yours, Minister Mahmoud.
Thank you very much, and distinguished participants. Good morning, everyone. Nigeria introduced the National Environmental Regulations on Electronic Sector in 20 exist, which limit the enforcement of the regulation, such as illegal trade of e-waste and inadequate state-of-the-art infrastructure, as there are few formal recyclers in the country and insufficient financial scheme. The regulations have defined the principle of the extended producer responsibility, the EPR, but there is as yet not much commitment from the private sector. Together with UNEP and JEF, we started a project to test circular collection and recycling approach with public institutions, private sector, companies, and informal e-waste collectors to develop a blueprint which can be scaled in other regions and countries.
Mm-hmm. So can you tell me a little bit about the learnings of this project? Can you share them with us?
Yes, we have done four things. One, we have reviewed the electrical electronic sector regulations and developed a guidance document on how to implement the EPR program in the sector. Number two, we have developed an optimal collection system and trained informal collectors on standards. We have assessed the current status of collection and recycling in a bid to upgrade them to handle the short-term priority of E and train informal handlers. And finally, number four, we captured best practices and successes and success cases to share with other African countries for regional upscaling of the project, and so increase the circularity of electronic sector. The project is entering its last year, and many lessons have been learned.
Okay, well, and you told me about some of the successes and that you're sharing them with other African countries, but it would be really nice if you could also share them with us. So can you tell me 3 key successes of the project?
Yes, indeed. Some of the successes of the project include one, as mentioned, we did a review of existing regulatory instrument and the development of a sector-specific guideline with the circular economy. Also, organizing the informal sector and training them on best available practices. And number 3, also reduction, elimination, and avoidance of chemicals of global concern and mercury-containing waste and their waste in the environment and in processes through better practices by the informal sector. And additionally, we make reference to how the project successes fit with Nigeria's nationally determined contribution targets. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the project is a pilot for upscaling in Africa and perhaps beyond. Is it ready to scale?
No, no, it's not ready, not
Oh,
yet.
what do you need to be able to scale it?
Well, first of all, the private sector are our main drivers of the sector, and there is need for greater commitment on their part to implement the EPR program for our collective environmental and health benefits. The private sector also players are to take responsibility for the waste from their products by signing into the program through registration with EPRON, the Producer Responsibility Organization, a third organization formed to enable producers collectively manage the mandatory take-back scheme. Now, not all the producers of EEE, including importers, have yet to sign up to the EPR program, which is a major challenge. To enforce EPR in practice, a registration system needs to be first developed, and all producers need to register to the system. The registration is mandatory, however. In the revised regulation, it was not so, as stated as an offense. This was one of the gaps identified for which the regulation was revised. Um, Once the revised regulation is gazetted, it will be an offense not to register. So at this point, some strong coordination between government units is necessary for EPR enforcement. Not only Ministry of Environment, but also the Nigeria Customs Service, Standard Organization of Nigeria, and the police, who have the power to arrest and detain suspects, are major stakeholders in the enforcement of the EPR.
All right, so enforcement is a high priority. Thank you very much, Mr. Mahmoud. It'd be interesting to look at the results of the poll, since you so clearly pointed out the relation between government responsibility, but also the responsibility of the private sector. I'm very curious to see, how the audience feels about this. Because we asked, how should e-waste collection in Africa be financed and managed? And the answer to that question in the poll, I'm going to look it up, is a little over 40% for answer D, financed by the private sector, managed by the government. I see you nodding, Minister Mahmoud. Is that something that you would agree with then, I assume?
Yes, I think going with private sector really this day is what really drives the economy. And this is part of what is happening in Africa, not just in circular economy, but many other things. You find that people are so much dependent on government, but private sector is really where the financing is.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people, some of you, that was the second highest rating, 30% answered financed by the private sector and also managed by the private sector. But would you be in favor of that, Minister Mahmoud, or would you like to manage it?
Well, the management by government oftentimes is a problem. I would like to see some kind of hybrid. Government should be part of something and be part of what is being done, but private sector is the main driver. Because the government is the one that can provide the regulations. They are the one that have the enforcers, the police, and all that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for your insights and your spontaneous responses to the outcome of the poll. And we will get back to you, Dr. Mahmoud. So I'm going to turn to Joost. Because you can still, by the way, put your comments in the chat box. It would be very interesting to hear from you. But Mr. de Kluiver, you are the CEO of Closing the Loop, a company with a circular service that makes the purchase of new electronics waste-free, but by collecting and recycling e-waste from Africa. Can you briefly, well, I would like to hear how you work, but I'm also curious, did you hear anything new or surprising from Dr. Mahmoud that you thought, oh, that sheds a new light?
Not so much surprising, but definitely something that we can relate to. It is a challenge that sometimes is just pointed at a specific player. You're responsible, but it's really an effort to collaborate on also the private sector and, of course, the government. So, yeah, something we're also trying to play a role in.
So closing the loop, how do you work?
So closing loop actually got started already some 10 years ago. We have quite an abundance of experience in collecting electronic waste in emerging markets. My co-founder is from the African continent. We have a footprint in some 10 African countries where we work with the informal sector, which is the sector that manages waste, also electronic waste, and make sure that that waste is properly collected and recycled. So one thing that we learned in our first years is that the main, let's say, challenge is the lack of a financing mechanism. I think I can be very clear. You cannot make money by collecting electronic waste properly in an emerging market, for example, a country like Ghana or Nigeria, if you want to do this legally. There's just too much cost connected to the proper activities, legal shipments, permitting, but also making sure, of course, that everyone does their work without creating any risks.
So that's the loop that needs to be closed.
Indeed.
It just doesn't add up.
We learned that the hard way, if you will, that that part is essential to create a business model. And we're a company, so we do want to create a profitable approach toward collecting electronic waste. So what we did is that we invented a new financing mechanism, a new business model that is known as waste compensation. It's quite simple, actually. We help customers here in Europe and in the US that when they buy a new device, such as a new phone, just device that they like, by making that device waste neutral, which means that to compensate a new phone, we collect. Now, this is a phone, a really old phone, an end-of-life device in, for example, a country like Nigeria. And that collection, that reduction of electronic waste, compensates a new device. It makes the device of our customers here in Europe and in the US waste neutral. So a very simple approach towards circular procurement for electronics.
Yeah, and you just pay a little extra. It's like buying your plane ticket and then compensating it by planting some trees.
It's a service, and it's a great way to indeed align your procurement of electronics as a company to your company values, but it's a really simple way to get started. Circularity can be quite complex. We try to make it a little bit more simple, and it works. We're serving customers now for 5 years all over the globe, and also the industry itself has come on board. We're working with companies like Samsung and Ingram Micro on that.
Great. Dr. Mahmoud just said that the private sector is the main drivers of the sector, and it needs to show greater commitment, right, for this extended producer responsibility programs, and that all producers of electronics equipment need to sign up to the existing programs. So do you agree that that's the best way forward, besides, of course, closing the loop? And how can you contribute to the Nigerian project?
Yeah, great. Well, clearly, I don't think anyone can disagree that the private sector is essential. An element that might be changed a little bit in these discussions is it's not only a matter of enforcement and pushing companies to doing what they don't want to do. Let me explain a little bit. So the current situation in emerging markets isn't the result of the informal market that wants to pollute. The current situation is that that's the only way how people locally can make money by, unfortunately, ineffective and also sometimes dangerous recycling. So that's simply happening because that's how they can make money.
Right.
So if you create a financing mechanism that actually funds proper collection and recycling, if you reward people to do something more sustainable and also for their own health, a better thing to do, then you can actually incentivize those local communities. But how to incentivize them, how to pay them for the proper management and collection of electronic waste? I think that's where private companies come in. That's where business models come in. And I think if we look at e-waste collection more as an opportunity instead of only a responsibility, we can actually engage companies much better. Responsibility is the domain of the compliance department, of the legal department of a company. And that's not really where the magic happens, right? So if we want to get companies on board, the private sector, we need to accept that they will come on board. Well, that might be unfortunate to some, but they will come on board if it is financially attractive to come on board.
Yeah.
So we need to connect waste collection to business models,
Absolutely.
to commercial incentives.
Yeah. We have time for one audience question. Peter is asking you, if we designed a circular economy for electronics, what would be the key building blocks? And what gaps does this identify when compared with the system in place today?
Sorry, could you repeat it for me, sorry?
If we designed a circular economy for electronics, what would be the key building blocks? And what gaps does this identify when it comes to
the question today? The question of building a circular economy is quite a big question, and some answer that with this is what it will look like in 10, 20, or 30 years' time. I think we need to also answer the question: what does it mean today? What can we do today? So linking those long-term goals, such as creating EPRs, perhaps also making the informal waste collection more formalized, so longer-term complex results, linking them to current action, and also incentivizing those that want to take those current actions. I think those combined are the building blocks. Current action that deliver on longer-term goals.
Yeah, current action that deliver on long-term goals. Yeah, very diplomatic. And it is true, it's a big topic. We can talk about circular economy like for days, which actually we're doing right now, but it's really good. So let's turn to Ms. van Leur, the Director of Sectoral Policies Department of the International Labour Organization. We've talked a little bit about labor already, having it addressed, and Mr. Kan Matsusaki of the Industrial Global Union Federation. Welcome to the session. Before diving into the discussion, let's have a look at how the informal collection and improper recycling practices affect the lives of informal workers. Here is the story of Agbo Bloshi, the world's largest e-waste location, told by Bennett Nana Akufu.
The first day I got here, I was shocked. You see the kind of work people are doing. They cut themselves, they expose themselves to so many things. My name is Bennett Nana Ekufu. I'm a project manager for Green Advocacy Ghana. So the boys here normally go around with trucks. They go to each home. If they come to my home, they will definitely buy a fridge from me. Then they bring it all the way here. They cut it into pieces. They get aluminium from the casing. They get copper from the motor found inside the fridges. So what they do is cut it with a hammer and a chisel. Then the cables found in them, they would burn to extract copper. Then what happens to the styrofoam? It is used as some kind of fuel. So if they need to process other kind of metals, they will add the styrofoam and set it ablaze. With the soil, we all know it's highly contaminated, and the levels of lead, cadmium, arsenic in the soil keep on rising. We did a health survey of people here. We found that most of them had elevated levels of heavy metals in their blood. Heavy metals is linked to cancer and other diseases. You know, this whole place is like a commercial district. You have people selling water, drinks, others working, others going around picking stuff from the floor. So it's a whole community on its own. Out here, there are about 4,000 people plus working here, and most of them spend their whole day here, so a lot of them will be exposed. You know, most people see Agbo Bloshi as a waste dump, but it's a service they are rendering to ordinary Ghanaians. Yes, it's bad, but it's a service we need. If Agbo Bloshi didn't exist, what would happen to our old vehicles, our old refrigerators, TV sets and all that?
Yeah, Ms. van Leur, what is going through your mind when seeing these images, I want to ask you, and with me also here is now Carola van Rijnshoever, Director Inclusive Green Growth and Ambassador of the Sustainable Development at the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Welcome. And you will listen in on this part of the session, and then later we will be entering a discussion. Thank you for joining us. So, Ms. van Leur, these images, they never cease to be shocking, I feel. What do you feel when seeing these images?
Yeah, as you say, shocking, and it actually makes me very sad to see this. And we see this repeatedly. It's not the only country, and it's not the only place where we see this, unfortunately. And what it makes clear, this video, is the need to act now. It highlights the complexity of e-waste in many countries, which we cannot deny, of course. It's a very complex situation. We also see the serious consequences e-waste can have on workers. But we must also realize that these are their livelihoods. These are their jobs. Mm-hmm. What we have heard before is we want to see issues addressed. We want to formalize e-waste systems. This is the ILO's main priority. But that means that we have to work with these informal network of workers.
Yeah, and that we're talking about 15 million people worldwide, as we saw in the opening. Your institution has conducted quite some research in the management of the end-of-use electronics and decent work, but also on the topic of a just transition towards environmentally sustainable economies and societies. Informal workers have been playing a significant role in e-waste management in Africa. Could you tell us, if Africa transitions towards a more formal recycling, right? Why should the existing informal networks transition to a formal economy? And what's at stake here? Because you mentioned quite rightfully that it is their livelihood.
Well, it's very clear that there's business in e-waste. We had a meeting some years ago on e-waste, particularly on e-waste, and this was one of the main conclusions. There's definitely business in e-waste. It's a valuable economic resource for enterprises of all sizes, small, medium-sized enterprises, but also larger enterprises. And as we have concluded already, it's a livelihood for many, many workers along the entire e-waste value chain. They recover, repair, refurbish, reuse, repurpose, and recycle all of their equipment. But we also see that this informal economy for e-waste is similar to other informal sectors, poor working conditions, limited opportunities for workers to organize themselves and to improve their livelihoods. And so what we see is that this part of the circular economy today is not creating the sustainable enterprises or green and decent jobs that we would like to see and that we urgently need. Yeah. So what we say is to generate these decent work opportunities for these millions and millions of informal e-waste workers and for these companies, we must provide them with the support and the incentives to transition to the formal economy. And it sounds quite like a kind of bureaucratic exercise. Formalization in itself is not an objective for the ILO, not an objective in itself, but it is really the necessary condition to reach these very important objectives. And without formalization and access to decent work is an illusion. That's the conclusion also. We have 187 member states. We have workers' organizations, employers' organizations among our membership. And they have all agreed that formalization is the biggest priority. Now, particularly also with COVID-19, we have seen that if the world would have had a much more formalized structure, we would have been in a different place. So the formalization of enterprises through increased productivity, better market access, it can really also contribute to sustainability and also a fair competition in national and international markets.
Absolutely. Let me turn to Mr. Matsusaki. Formalization, as proposed by ILO and others, would be ideal, but may take some time to achieve. Are there short-term, intermediate ways to start improving workers' rights in electronics collection and recycling? Meanwhile, and what can unions and the private sector do?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. But let me introduce, our organization, which is Industrial Global Union. We are actually representing workers from, the mining, manufacturing, and energy workers. And we have right now 50 million members from 600, unions from 140 countries, and which include formal and informal e-waste workers. And from our experience, most of informal e-waste workers are not aware of the health risk of the handling hazardous materials, which is contained in the e-waste. That is because they have no knowledge on the occupational health and safety standard and no recognition on their workers' basic rights. And since they are not organized, so they have no collective voice and no bargaining power to demand better working conditions. So in the short term, we believe that education and training on the workers' basic rights and also occupational health and safety standards are immediate need for the e-waste workers to protect their lives. And the workers will then have opportunity to exercise their workers' rights and also promote decent work as intermediate wage. So we believe that all stakeholders, unions, private sectors, companies, the government, and international organizations such as ILO, they all can contribute to providing such education trainings for informal e-waste workers. So Industry has been supporting, for example, its affiliate in e-waste workers in India to organize themselves and create, the unions and also the provide various, education and training program. So I would say, in the short term, especially education training for the workers on the workers' rights and on also occupational health and safety standard is immediate need.
Right. So education, training, also healthcare, I heard you say. Ms. van Leur, what's ILO's key recommendation to solve these challenges, and who needs to be involved to address these short-term needs?
Thank you for that question. I would like to mention just on this issue of informality, the transition to informality to formality, we have a tool. We have a very concrete tool. It's called ILO Recommendation number 204 concerning the transition from the informal to the formal economy. Now, what we say is getting to decent work in e-waste rests to two transitions. One is, as I mentioned already earlier, a transition from the informal to the formal economy, and the other one is just transition to environmentally sustainable economies and societies for all. These are two big concepts, two big principles that are debated within the ILO and that are quite common and commonly known also and integrated in strategies of many of our members.
Yeah.
And for these transitions to be effective, they must be based on social dialogue. Social dialogue is a key word in ILO. It means an effective dialogue between all relevant stakeholders, crucial to engage the right ministries, ministries of labor, employers and workers' organizations, also other ministries, of course, they have to work together. They are the ones that who have most at stake, and they will be needed to make real change happen. And this is not just a talking point. The ILO is over 100 years old, and social dialogue has proven to be very effective in making change in the world.
Yeah.
So, for example, the new Climate Action for Jobs initiative, which is designed to support countries in implementing national climate action commitments, is currently being launched. And it will also help ensure that jobs and well-being and a just transition remain at the heart of climate responses.
Yeah.
And it provides countries with tools for assessing tools for assessing investments and also policy options that focus on jobs in the transition to a sustainable economy.
Absolutely.
This reflects the power of what we in the ILO call tripartism, and I cannot put enough emphasis on that. It all is how we make things happen. It is collaboration between governments, employers, and workers together.
Yeah.
And their involvement is just very much key to finding these innovative solutions, and that we ensure that we leave no one behind in the transition to a circular economy.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Matsusaki, what, according to you, should be done to include the informal workers in the e-waste value chain and to engage them in that important social dialogue as presented by Ms. van Leur?
Yeah, we fully support this ILO the convention recommendation and various tools, because we are the part of the ILO as a workers representative. And also that it has been already mentioned that this e-waste material value alone, waste is worth 55 billion euro, and if we effectively use that value in the circular economy, the millions of the jobs with living wage could be created. So I think the private sector especially has a role to propose economically sustained business model with providing decent work to the existing informal workers. Then the government, the employers, the worker organization should engage in social dialogue and how to utilize those values to provide the decent work and living wage for the informal workers. So then also we need to more think about to advance how we can implement the idea of decent work and support just transition towards a sustainable e-waste management.
Yeah, Joost is taking a lot of notes here. Meanwhile, I would like to turn to Mr. Bartel in Germany. He is the Parliamentary State Secretary to the Federal Minister of Economic Development, Cooperation and Development. Welcome to the discussion. It's a pleasure to have you here. BMZ has been supporting e-waste management projects in Ghana and other countries for many years, as well as through the Prevent Waste Alliance. The Honourable Minister and Mr. de Kluiver have presented different ways towards the common objective of getting more controlled electronics to high standard recycling. Both have called on the private sector to act more. What is BMZ's experience from your work in Ghana? What can be effective ways to achieve that objective, and how do you see the roles of the government versus the business in this, as we have asked the audience?
So thank you, Sophie, fellow panelists and online audience. The German government has been supporting environmentally and socially sound e-waste management for many years, substantially intensifying its support in the last years. We are also integrating the issue of e-waste into our solar energy projects, for example in Nigeria and Ethiopia. In particular, Germany is supporting Ghana in improving the framework conditions for sustainable e-waste management. We are providing 25 million euros for this program. And together we are engaging in constructing e-waste handover centers and in piloting a national financial incentive system for the proper recycling and disposal of e-waste. At the Ebok-Bloshi scrapyard, a training workshop, a health clinic, and a football pitch have been built, which has significantly improved the overall situation for the informal workers in this sector. The Association of Scrap Workers has been strengthened. And one of the key lessons learned is how incentives can be used to redirect e-waste fractions into formal recycling systems. In a pilot scheme, informal collectors were able to take unburned cables to a formal collection point where they were paid a similar price to what they would get for burned cables. As a result, 27 tons of cables have already been collected and recycled properly instead of being burned in open fires. The government of Ghana is continuing the incentive scheme, and some additional 30 tons of cables have already been collected. These are tangible results. And on a global level, we need to develop networks where all stakeholders work together: policymakers, civil society, the recycling industry, as well as academics. And in Germany, Development Minister Gerd Müller launched the Prevent Waste Alliance in May 2019, in which diverse stakeholders discuss and develop solutions for the e-waste problem in low and middle income countries. And in less than 2 years, around 200 institutions have joined Prevent. And just yesterday, another great producer of copper in Germany joined Prevent. And ultimately, finance is key. Indeed, extended producer responsibility, EPR schemes, where the private sector takes on more responsibility, are probably the best approach to secure adequate financing in a sustainable way. However, the establishment of such schemes is a lengthy process, and we also need to look at what can be done in the meantime. And I'm glad that we have the Honorable Minister of Environment from Nigeria and Closing the Loop on this panel today, as Closing the Loop started a pilot in Nigeria in January that is financed by the Prevent Waste Alliance. The pilot will look at collecting and at finding treatment solutions for particularly dangerous and low-value e-waste fractions, such as lithium-ion batteries and mercury-containing flat screens. We hope that the solutions can be directly integrated into Nigeria's new EPR scheme and replicated afterwards in regions where EPR still appears to be a long way off. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bartel. And I was thinking that football pitch, was that your idea? Because you started out as a gymnastics teacher in your career. So that's a nice and sportive element that you've added there. But the other points, of course, the social dialogue, the training, the education, obviously very important points. I really feel like Germany is taking a wonderful role here, Joost, and he's in on closing the loop.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And we're big fans of organizations such as GIZ, which is supported by the ministry, that indeed take that dual role, looking for long-term solutions, but not talking about what should at some point be done, but acting also on current challenges. And I think we really need that bottom-up approach as well. We need to talk to those NGOs, international organizations, governments, top-down. But bottom-up, we also have those very challenging situations where refugees work in the informal sector that have no education. So telling them that they need to be part of an EPR scheme or telling them that they need to formalize can be challenging today. Yeah. So more of a longer-term approach indeed.
Thank you, Joost. Thank you also, Mr. Bartel. We've heard from all of our speakers. Now, how can we move into action? Because we really feel the momentum and the importance. The PACE, a public-private leadership platform, has recently launched the Circular Economy Action Agenda on electronics with 10 calls to action. And with me is Ms. van Rijnshoever. The Dutch government supports PACE to build out these projects and to support that action agenda. Can you share how PACE and its partner are concretely taking action to take these calls to action forward?
Yes, absolutely. And PACE indeed is a leadership platform. It brings together actors from government, business, science, you name it, to work together to take this action, to put into practice what we're talking about these days. As you said, PACE has drafted its action agenda, and it has like 10 points to take action upon to get to better management of electronic waste. We want to pick out 2 of the 10 actions to start with. They are collection systems and decent work, and bring them together to take action. And I completely agree with His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud and others who have said and who have underlined the importance of extended producer responsibility.
Right.
At the same time, it became very clear that it will take a while until we have this on the ground in, for example, Western African countries.
Yes, of course.
So we have to work on that and bring together government, workers, companies to realize, to put into practice that EPR, extended producer responsibility. But in the meantime, we also want to take action immediately.
Yes, what did you find?
Well, PACE has been speaking to different actors in the field over the past period. For example, the African Circular Economy Alliance and the Latin American Coalition on Circular Economy. And they found, actually what others have said as well, finance is key to unlock finance for collection systems, for bringing on board companies, to train and educate informal workers, to make sure that they are aware of the risks they're exposed to and that they are on board to formalize their work in a sustainable way.
Yeah.
So that is what we want to start working on, and we really want to bring together all those partners to put this into practice.
And you're talking about moving into action and really taking out these 2 action points to really move on as quickly as possible. How are you going to move into action?
Well, first by singling out action options. So we need to do a bit more talking between all these actors here around the table to see what can we do concretely.
Even more talking?
A bit more.
Yeah, a bit more.
A bit more to take those short-term actions to find out what's really the best thing to do in specific countries, because the situation is different in every country. And then to build partnerships to put that into action, because you cannot act alone. As I think also Joost has pointed out, you need the whole group to get to action. And then to disseminate that knowledge from where we work in maybe 1 or 2 African countries to other countries to actually copy and scale what we are doing.
Yeah, and who will you work with?
I think we need governments to help with regulations and, for example, take away impediments to exporting waste. We need companies to provide the material, and then especially also the workers.
Yeah.
I mean, what do they need? What do they want? We also need to look at that.
Yeah. So government, companies, workers, actually everybody needs to be involved.
Yes.
Really. Okay, thank you so much for now. Let me go to some audience questions. We'd also love to hear how you feel about the idea proposed to implement these 2 calls to action by the PACE Action Agenda. So please share your insights in the comment box. But we've also gathered some Ask the Speaker questions. And the first question is for Dr. Mahmoud. Given informal recyclers can give a higher price for e-waste compared to formal recyclers, how can the government incentivize businesses and informal workers to participate in formal and safe recycling systems?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, the question is, given the fact that informal recyclers can give a higher price for e-waste compared to the formal recyclers, how do you incentivize businesses and these workers to participate in this formal and therefore safer recycling systems?
Well, healthy quality people. If you do it the formal way, you know everything is being and it should be taken to be and to be informal is exposing what.
I'm afraid that the connection is too shattered at this moment, unfortunately. Let me turn to a question for Mr. Bartel as we try and restore the connection with Dr. Mahmoud. Very sorry about this. Mr. Bartel, would it be possible by law, asks Heike, to stop the export of electronic waste? Would it be possible by law that waste is treated in the country where it has been generated?
I think it is possible to do this by law because the governments are responsible for all the circular waste management. Waste management is the same issue as water management, and therefore it's a responsibility of the governments. And I think with new laws we can avoid the export and import wastes and to get better circle management systems in the countries where the products are produced. But we also have to distinguish in the waste management between different types of informal activities. I think the informal collectors and repairers are much more effective than formal systems at collecting and pre-processing. So we need to recognize informal collection as a service and pay for it as such, rather than just paying for the material value of the collected items. So I think we need new steps forward to formalization, and the private sector actors can support the establishment of collector associations and can provide ID cards, or they can provide uniforms or training and health insurance, as well as offering financial incentives or salaries. So I think governments need to allow for formal, informal systems to be established. And this can mean supporting their inclusion in EPR policy, possibly even given preferential treatment to private sector actors who aim to pursue an inclusive recycling approach. So we have to do both. The legal activities on the body of the governments in the producing countries, and new systems in the countries where the waste management is exported.
Yes, thank you very much for that elaborate answer, Mr. Bartel. We'd love to hear how our audience feels about the idea proposed to implement these two calls to action from the PACE Action Agenda. So please share your views. Already getting some comments. Reinhard is saying the challenges relating the short-term actions to the long-term goals. Both are important. We have to ensure that what we can do now doesn't get lost in our highly ambitious future goals, which is very much in line with what you both have said, actually, what Joost has also said before. So thank you very much. While we are gathering these responses, please let me ask the speakers, what is your response and commitment to moving the proposed way forward? In other words, how are you going to keep that drumbeat going? We're going to start with Dr. Mahmoud. I hope that His Excellency is better connected to us right now. Visually, that does seem to be the case. So please let us hear, how will you keep the drumbeat going?
Yeah, sorry, I had some technical problems there, but just a quick one that to get people to go to the formal sector is simply telling them that is the best practice, but better quality environment and healthy people that are working in that sector. So, well, the proposed project is a welcome idea as it would complement the JEF project that is currently ongoing. Thank you.
Thank you also very much for responding to that audience question. Still lovely. And then I go to Mr. Bartel. How will you keep it going, and what's your commitment?
So Germany commits to all the activities. I think PACE is a good initiative, and I think it's necessary that we work together with PACE, and we would like to offer our support to PACE and in embedding its activities in more long-term cooperation with our partner countries. So we also support the solving the e-waste problem initiative, the SDEP. With this initiative, we work together in India, and we enhance our efforts to get better waste management systems all over the world.
Thank you very much for that commitment. Then Mr. Matsusaki.
Yes, since we are, we are already engaging with the unions all over the world, including in Africa. So we will continue to engage with the labor unions in Africa and extend our solidarity support and guidance on how to strengthen informal workers. For example, we can bring in the experience from India e-waste informal workers, because we had quite good achievement over there to improve the health and safety situation in the e-waste workers in India. Then also we will think about how we can provide education training together with other stakeholders, how to protect their lives, how to utilize personal protection equipment, and education training on the workers' rights, using ILO international standards. And we will, educate and train them to how to exercise their rights. And also, we're thinking, which is important, is that we will continue to engage in effective social dialogue with the employer and the government. And I believe that ILO, which already have the tripartite system, And we also get involved in a lot of the discussion within the ILO in the e-waste. So we fully support those the project developed by ILO as a part of ILO, as a workers' representative. And of course, we are trade unions. So we continue to organize workers because we believe this organized workers union can make workplace safer and healthier. So this is our commitment.
Thank you for that commitment. What are your plans, Alet van Leur, to ensure decent work in the transition to circular electronics?
Well, thank you very much for that question. I first would like to start by thanking PACE for putting forward that ambitious and action-oriented plan. And we are really happy to see that this action agenda also reflects the commitment of PACE to decent work. And also today's event is, of course, a good example of that. We have always been committed to strengthening partnerships, finding further opportunities for collaboration, and we definitely hope to do so with PACE and also with other organizations that wish to join the fight to tackle the e-waste problem and to promote decent work. So our mandate, ILO's mandate to promote social justice and decent work is really at the core of efforts made in these last year to ensure a just transition to environmental sustainability. As Ken has already alluded to, we are currently developing an ILO program. It's called Advancing Decent Work in the Circular Economy in Selected Sectors. And then facilitating a just transition towards circularity in these sectors and countries. And electronics and e-waste issues are quite central in this program. And we are currently reaching out to partners to support us in implementing this program. But may I just mention an example? We have in Nigeria, we have a tool to formalize collectors, and that have not only led to better working conditions, better safety and health conditions, higher wages, access to social protection, but also a positive impact on the livelihoods of their families. And meanwhile, we know that transition to formality is a longer-term goal, but meanwhile, we also take immediate action to improve the lives of workers and informal waste collectors.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much. We hope that we can all join forces to ensure that the circular economy will generate decent work opportunities for more women and men in the future. Thank you.
A wish to join forces, Carola? Think that's possible?
Absolutely, and I'm very happy with all the responses. I want to thank all the speakers for their support, and especially Mr. Matsutake. He said, we have to bring experiences from, for example, India to other countries to do this cross-learning from each other and to bring best practices to other countries. And I think that's a very good way forward, and we'll be very happy to pick up on that one.
Yeah, I thought your commitment would be so clear. So you want to fully commit to the action agenda by PACE, or are there any side notes you'd like to make?
Sure, why not? You're right. We're a very simple company, so we just do one thing.
I didn't say you were simple.
Well, I do. We've collected millions of devices in the last almost 10 years, so we're good at collecting waste, right? But I think the thing that we can bring to the table is changing the narrative. It's not only a problem. If we keep talking about e-waste as a problem, then it will be only the domain of NGOs and governments. And I love those organizations, but to engage the private sector, we need a more positive story. We need to create incentives that work for private entities. And so a simple business model, an engaging business model, a more positive approach, I think will work. We're proving that, and I'm really happy to see that it's being scaled also by GIZ and others, and happy to work also with PACE on that.
Yesterday we had a session about the financial sector, and I thought that Morgan Stanley was really embracing that positive storytelling and really shifting it towards a story that is engaging and incentivizing really for companies. So I think there are lots of beautiful examples of that, and it's very important. Thank you for stressing that. I would love to extend a big thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable time with us in this session. session today, and I believe that we've made some beautiful steps forward. Thank you so much. Thank you also to our audience for watching and for actively participating, asking questions, answering polls, and whatnot. Please stay with us in this conference since we have some beautiful parts in our program coming up. Hope to see you then. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.